Fear Appeals and Political Advertising by Vigil-Scott. To understand, first, we need to know what I mean when I talk about fear appeals and political advertising. Fear appeals is a strategy for motivating people to take a particular action, endorse a particular policy, or buy a particular product by using fear. Today we're specifically going to talk about political advertising. Any advertising for the purpose of influencing public opinion with respect to legislative, administrative, or electoral matters, or with respect to any controversial issue of public importance. Research into the effectiveness of fear appeals in political advertising is crucial. Understanding how fear influences voter behavior, whether it leads to increased engagement or backlash, and its long-term effects on political discourse is essential. The effectiveness and impact depend on the issue being presented in a way that makes people think it is a real and serious threat to them or their loved ones. It must provide a plan of action or solution to motivate people to act. For example, if you see the visual, even a little can help a lot now. Buy U.S. war stamp bonds. So the effectiveness works because it is mostly targeted towards women who are taking care of their children back home while the men go off to fight the war, and it gives them a plan of action or a solution that will motivate the women to act in order to help out. The ethical dimension of fear-based messaging is a big concern. Questions about the responsible use of fear appeals, potential manipulation, and the balance between informing voters and exploiting their emotions needs to be considered. Some critics argue that fear appeals target victims rather than the actual issue. This places the concentration on the individualistic change rather than legislative, systemic, or regulatory change. There are some arguments that the action of fear appeals requires steps which could be limited by certain work and/or family constraints, cost, or even poor access to certain resources. On the right, you'll see a picture of a child being covered, their mouth being covered by smoke made into a hand, and this shows that it targets the victim because the victim would be the child in this scenario, and that would create some fear to the people who are doing the smoking around. An in-depth look at the psychological mechanisms behind fear appeals is important. How does fear influence decision-making? What are the cognitive and emotional processes that play when individuals happen to encounter these fear-based political ads? Fear appeals emphasize potential danger and harm that could come to the individual if they do not take the action suggested by the advertisement. Theoretical perspectives depict fear as a source of motivation to viewers. According to a meta-analytic study, fear appeals are particularly effective when the communication depicts relatively high amounts of fear, includes an efficacy message, stresses severity and susceptibility, recommends one-time only behaviors, and targets audiences that include a larger percentage of female message recipients. As you can see to the left, this is towards female message recipients holding babies, and it is using the fear of the Nazi symbol and the other war symbols to incentivize the women to buy victory bonds. Effects on the public. Fear appeals can impact public trust in political institutions and media. Research on how fear affects public opinion and whether it erodes trust in the political process is a vital area of study. Elections are one of the best environments for political advertising and fear appeals, and one that affects the general public the most. Fear can be used to drive votes towards a particular candidate or a party. a method that relies on our natural instinct to find safety in numbers. Fact-checking is the most important tactic for the public to use when seeing these advertisements. On the right, you can see "Don't Let Her Fail Us Again" with Hillary Clinton, and on the bottom you can see that it was paid for by Donald Trump's president, and it was approved by Donald Trump. This is his party, and this is an example of how fear appeals are used in elections and political advertisements. Regulation and accountability. Exploring regulatory frameworks surrounding political advertising, especially those that induce fear, is necessary. Evaluating the effectiveness of existing regulations and considering potential reforms is crucial in maintaining a fair and transparent political communication. A few regulations are that candidates must state the advertisement was paid for by the candidate's authorized committee. If it was paid for by a political action committee, a party committee, or another person, that group or person must be identified. Internet public communications that include text or graphic components must include a written disclaimer that can be viewed without taking any action. In the background, you can see an advertisement for Raphael Warnock when he was running for U.S. Senate, and on the bottom in big white letters, you can see that this was approved by Warnock and is paid for by his political party or his party action committee. Alternative strategies. Early campaigning allows candidates to engage with voters, listen to their concerns, and tailor their message accordingly. This is an example of how investigating alternative strategies to fear appeals could be used in positive messaging, issue-focused campaigns, or fact-based communication. Another strategy is to take time to discover the most pressing issues facing the constituency and their priorities and concerns. Candidates can craft a message that connects them with voters using hope, authenticity, and sincerity. Consistency while reinforcement of candidates' core values is another strategy that many candidates can take when doing political campaigning. To the right, you can see an example of this when President Obama was running for office. This was one of his campaign posters. Very simple, yet it does not use fear appeals to sway any voters. It uses an alternative strategy such as hope. Historical examples. Studying historical examples is very important. As you can see, fear appeals have been used through history to start and fuel many, many wars. This started way back when ancient Athens was fighting Sparta, and even in World War I and World War II. Today, we mostly see it used in political advertisements to spark fear to collect more votes for said party. The examples you can see from left to right is the most recent ones. All three of these are political advertisements put out by the Trump political committee, and you can see they are essentially stating that it's a national emergency to build the wall for America's safety due to it being at risk. In the middle, you can see it can happen here with the house being knocked down, and this is being used to show that unless they keep firing at the opponents will bring the party to their house, and that is terrifying to most people, so that is how they would use fear appeals in the World War I and World War II posters and advertisements. Lastly, far right, you can see "Is This Tomorrow" with an American flag burning in the background and people being knocked down and falling over. And the poster states, "This is America under communism." So as you can see, these fear appeals have been used many times all throughout history, and it's not only in America, it is also all around the world. Citizens' education. Promoting media literacy and critical thinking among citizens is a key aspect of addressing fear-based political advertising. Exploring ways to empower individuals to determine fact from fear-mongering is crucial. You can do this by developing skills to analyze and critically evaluate media messages, including their construction, purpose, and impact. On the left, on the top, you can see this is our world as it is today. Most of it is online, on social media, on online news outlets, and there is a lot of fake news in the world, people painting a story they would like to hear rather than the truth. And it makes it very difficult for this generation and other generations to determine what is fact and what is fear-mongering. On the bottom, you can see a visual example of what media literacy could look like. Getting to know the source, know who the audience is for, is there a balance, or is it leaning too far to one side? And on the left, you can see reverse image searches are always a good idea. You never know what people can Photoshop nowadays. These topics reflect the multidimensional nature of fear appeals in political advertising. It encompasses psychology, ethics, policy, and media studies. Researchers, policymakers, and the public should engage with these issues to foster informed and responsible political communication. Thank you.